Well met, everyone. I am Rich the Lich. One moment. You know how this goes. What is... Blood of the Gods. Who am I? I'm Rich the Lich. I'm doing a video today, a spotlight on exploring Eberron. This is a 249-page PDF that I downloaded and bought off of DM's Guild for $29.95. I will put a link in the description where you can find this. I hope that by the end of this video, you're a bit better informed as to whether or not this might be some content that's a good fit for you and your gaming group. Let's jump into it. Exploring Eberron, as I said, DM's Guild. Front cover, the thing that stands out the most, not the artwork, at the bottom, Keith Baker. Yes, folks, this is DM's Guild content. This is unofficial, but Keith Baker is the creator of Eberron. He's the guy. So, if you were ever going to at least consider and look into some extra content, some extra good bits to add to your table, you might want to take it from the words of the one who created the world. So, let's delve into this guy, right? Here we go. First page, exploring Eberron. Map of the plains. Really cool. Cool pictures. It looks like we're exploring things that are beyond what I've already read. And that kind of reminds me, transitions smoothly into, I am comparing and contrasting the information that's here within these 249 pages with that which is within the current 5th edition book, Eberron Rising from the Last War. Before I lay this book before you, one disclaimer. This is a vision of Eberron as I run it at my table. You'll find a few details that don't align with previous source books. It's up to you to decide which to use. But remember that there's always a third option, using your answer. From the beginning, nearly 2 decades ago now, when we chose not to present the cause of the morning or reveal the powers of the Mark of Death, we wanted Eberron to inspire players and dungeon masters, not to limit them. This is a book of ideas for you to build upon, and some you might even ignore. This presents my Eberron, but I'm always thrilled to see people making the world their own. And now, Eberron awaits. This is made by the guy that made Eberron, so you might want to kind of open up your ears and listen a bit. And on that note, open up your ears and listen to what I'm saying. House Orion, right? Responsible for the Mark of Passage, I think it is. The lightning rail and all that stuff. Cool piece of artwork. Discovering Eberron is Chapter 1. I mean, if we go back to the table of contents here really quickly. Chapter 1, a lot of lore on the ages and different places. Chapter 2 talks about some of the races. That's a little more backstory, sort of how they influence and navigate their way through this world. What's their place? Chapter 3 kind of does the same as races, but it does it for the faiths. Gives us backstory, lore, and details, things like this. But then it starts to poke at us with the Aasimar from Volo's Guide. There's not a lot of races from Volo's Guide that are in the Eberron Rising from the Last War. There's a lot of races, but are playable, I should say. But Aasimar is here. Chapter 4, Uncharted Domains. This covers some specific areas where you're going to have the potential for a lot of really exciting adventure. But it is only talking about Drome, Dakan, the Maror Holds, and the Thunder Sea. But, I mean, each one is given like a dozen pages of treatment on details about that. Again, beyond what's in Eberron Rising from the Last War on those specific places. Kind of indicated by that picture you saw in the beginning, the Planes of Existence. That's a big thing. If you want to venture beyond Corvair, and I'm talking about even, I keep saying beyond, to infinity and beyond. I'm not talking about the distant lands like Arenal, Arganessen, Zendrick, stuff like that. No, this is beyond. These are things beyond the material plane. Chapter 6, that's the one you're all clamoring for. The character options. So let's briefly go over this real quick. There are 3 new backgrounds. You have the Changeling Traveler, the Dakani Goblinoids, and the Malenti. For races, you have the Aasimar, and this is not as written in Volo's Guide. This is Eberron's take on using Aasimar in your games. The Aranai Elves. You have a different type of dwarf, the Ruinbound. Even though Eberron Rising from the Last War does allow goblinoids to be playable, here you're getting hobgoblins, goblins, bugbears, but you're getting kind of the Dakani variant. So I may kind of that feature. When I get to that part, I may pop up on screen the two and see if there's a compare and contrast. See what the difference is between the goblinoids here from Dakani versus the goblinoids as written in Rising from the Last War. You can also play as gnolls. There's a bunch of racial feats. That's always a good option. And then class options. Guys, we've got 7 brand new subclasses here. There's 2 new ones for the Artificer, the Forge Adept, and the Maverick. Kind of the way that Xanathar's gave Warlocks some new invocations, I think. You're getting some new infusions here as well. And there's a decent amount of them. It's really good. And then you've got a new Bard College, the College of the Dirge Singer. New Cleric Domain, the Mind Domain. Circle of the Forged Druid, and Living Monk of the Way Living to that thing. You've got a bunch of new treasures talking about Cyberus, dragon marks, and then friends and foes, kind of the icons, the enemies that are especially specific to Eberron, right? Like the Dalkir and Merfolk you've seen before, but the Kori, things like that. Let's see what's here, man. Look at this, Warforged Druid. That's an awesome picture. Looks cool. As I said, all the preface stuff, the preface. Ages Past, Chapter 1, Discovering Eberron. So what I like is every one of these sections, the Age of Demons, more than 100,000 years ago, he has this little blurb on why does it matter. Okay, cool. I read something about the Age of Demons 100,000 years ago. But when my players are walking through the village, the senses, right? What they see, what they hear. What food do they eat? So what do they taste? Who do they interact with? What's the textiles and the clothing? What does the wood on the building feel like? What do they touch? Whatever the last 5th sense is. The stuff that matters when my players are going through the camp tonight. I like that he kind of gives this little blurb on why does it matter, and then character ideas. For the Age of Demons, though the overlords are bound and the sovereigns no longer walk the earth, consider these ways your character might be caught up in their legendary struggle. Perhaps a character has a dragon shard embedded in its flesh. Perhaps a character possesses an object your parents swore once belonged to a sovereign. So he's trying to sort of take the big picture of this is 100,000 years ago, here's 80,000 to 40,000 years ago. But now, why does it matter? Why is it going to matter at my table? Why should I use it? And I like that flow and that presentation. So it's a really good lore section. Bunch of calendar and timeline stuff, and it does this for all of it, right? The War of the Mark, this is what it's about. History, lore. This is Keith kind of coffee shop just sitting with me and saying, let me tell you about the War of the Mark. But here's why you should bring it to your table. Okay? And, things of why should you maybe bring this to, attach this to one of your characters? How might it help flesh them out a little more? And then here's a wonderful part. Seer, right? The nation of Galifar, or the kingdom of Galifar. Of the 5 nations, Seer was considered the heart of the kingdom. And that kingdom just gone. That's what it sounded like, too. The morning just destroyed it. And in Eberron Rising from the Last War, we are in the timeline where Seer is gone. There's that big bubble, that white area on the map, the smoke. But people may be excited about, that place used to be super important. What was it like? And he explores that here. So this is entirely new content that is really, really good. Yes, you're not going to be able to go back to this thing, but it might inform what some of the ruins were like. What sort of armor, arms, clothing you might find if you explore and navigate your way into the Mournland and beat all the monsters and horrible things there. Because here, you've got the section on what our dreams imagined Seer was before the morning, Outer Seer. You've got Seer and the Last War and sort of their role. Here's what the style was like. Here's the fashion, here's the cuisine, here's what magic was like, religion. And I love this because it kind of reminds us of just how horrible this event was, of 1 million Sirens and stuff dying, because it kind of just indicates that there was a living, thriving group, an entire nation, not just like a village or something, that lived in this way. So I love this little introduction, bit, or how it's kind of ushering us into, here's what Seer was like before it blew up. And then you have the Last War Remnants. So right here, to clarify what lies ahead, this section does not present a system for running mass combats. Rather, it explores the tools and tactics used in the Last War so that adventurers can incorporate those elements into the story. You're dealing with arcane artillery, and some of it has, full-blown stat treatment, equipment stuff, possibly even magical in nature. This siege staff requires attunement by a spellcaster. Long rod, enhanced artillery, arcane explosives. Just more good bits, on the level of firearms and high-level tech. Things that were used. And even if you don't want to give these things to your PCs, if you're not going to go full-blown siege warfare stuff, they may be they're things that people might pull parts of this off of. You can create entire quest lines and story hooks of, I need a piece of the ancient trebuchet that was used, or in the case of Eberron, it's probably a little more high-tech trebuchet. Magic in the world, I love this. Magical ambience. That's one thing, magic is very wide. It's not high level magic, but it's everywhere. And he just keeps giving us more stuff on ways that you can really bring about that vibe and that feel to remind your players of just the prevalence of magic everywhere. As we start to scroll through, you get some, artificers and invention and innovation. Background ideas. I like this. You want to play a soldier, but approach it from the perspective of a siege engineer. You operated and maintained the engines of war. It attaches you more to Eberron specifically. So just more flavor. Beautiful piece of artwork right there. The Races of Eberron gives you a bunch of lore on the changelings, concepts. I've got a bunch of players at my table that don't really know a lot about Eberron, and one of them was looking into a changeling. This is just giving us more depth, more things that they might be able to latch onto and grab onto to help flesh out their character and give them some rhyme and reason as to why they do what they do and their place in the world, right? And it does that for the Elves of Erenal. And as you scroll through, Aranai quirks, the Kalish Star. Let's see what else. Shifters. Of course, it's going to cover Warforged. Beautiful artwork right there. Chapter 3. What we just talked about a little bit in brief with the races, it does the same here. Okay, the Faiths of Eberron. What is divine magic, arcane magic, the role of the divine magic in everyday life, the Silver Flame, right, dabbling into these things. A lot to read, but definitely, just lore. Seeds planted for the dungeon master, or players perhaps, if you have a cleric or a paladin that really wants to latch onto this stuff. The other thing I like is when you get into, here it's just giving you a lot more than what's already in Rising from the Last War. But I think there's one with the... it mentions the cults of the Dragon Below, of course, in Eberron Rising from the Last War. But Keith went on and just gave us, the full treatment here on Belashira, the daughter of Kybra. I love that it has this, the heraldry or their marks. Durn the Corruptor. And what they might give, what are the forces like of Durn? What are the gifts? Some character ideas, some story ideas. Look at this. Every one of them. Belashira, forces. What does that manifest for those cults that are following in the Lord of Eyes? What does that look like when you run into those creatures or those people that you have to fight against? What gifts? Why would I want to worship this one instead of this one? What are some character ideas for people that, the warlock, like it says here, can be an excellent patron for a great old one? What are some story ideas? It does that for the daughter of Kybra. Kybra, uppercut. Anybody know that from Street Fighter? Durn the Corruptor, Katashka, Kirzin. Just flavor. More good stuff. Unusual faiths. So on and so forth. The Lord of Blade, the Draconic Prophecy, Aasimar. Now it kind of gives us the lore backstory of, hey, here's how we might want to start interjecting, and here's how Aasimar fit into the world to allow them as a playable race. Okay? It gives you all of that good stuff. Now, Chapter 4 is a lot more for DMs. I'm not going to cover it too much here. It covers a bunch of details. If I'm playing in Drome, I'm going to look at everything that's suggested or written about in Eberron Rising from the Last War, and then I'm going to read this stuff as well. Drome, ancient history, ancient land. And what I like is, looking at Drome here, I skipped over cuisine, right? So the real tangible stuff. When my PCs arrive in Drome, I can give them the essence of that based on what they eat, what they smell, the senses, right? It helps them separate quickly. Okay, this is not Breland. This is not Ondare with the magical whatever. This is a different place. This feels more monstrous, so on and so forth. It feels influenced by the hags. I can tell because the food tastes like this is some weird hag stew. Is that an eyeball that just popped up? Speaking of blood of the gods and hags. But when you're fighting things, he gives us these little stat blocks. The Skull Crusher Ogres and the War Trolls. Their stats and the little changes from regular Monster Manual stuff, it makes it feel like, okay, I remember Drome because those ogres were different than the ogres I typically fight elsewhere. the other trolls that I fought in the random swamps, or even in that other world. It brings the players into this world, into Drome. It covers the same full fleshed out treatment. I mean, there's 15 pages here just on Drome, and the same for Dakan. Okay, so it covers Dakan and all that other stuff. You have an entire goblin glossary of language. I mean, this is the epitome of, I mean, at the end of the day, guys, we're all nerds. You know, we're just loving this stuff and creating worlds and telling stories and using accents and making up NPCs. This is Keith going full nerd mode, and it's just beautiful to watch. You know, and he consulted with people to try and give some level of linguistic accuracy to this. So if you want to take this, you know, here's Goblin's words and phrases that you may enjoy using to add flavor to your roleplay. Goblin language, right here. Because goblins are big, you know, that's where I think all the orc scripture and all the orc stuff comes back. You know, the root of it all is based on goblin. So phenomenal that, you know, you might just hear Vannen. That means the sun's going down. It's dusk, right? The Maror holds, all right? So there's a lot of good, cool bits in the Uncharted domain section. I mean, I've been scrolling for a while. Finally, the last part is on the Thunder Sea. We keep scrolling through Chapter 4, all that lore on the various places, right? Chapter 5, all about the planes of existence. Maybe you want to go there, right? You want to turn your game into something that feels a little more like Sigil, Planescapey. All the details about that outside of, which I love because it's stuff that you can simply skip over the chapter in the section if you want to just stay really grounded into Corvair and just focus on what's happening in that cave and in that dungeon, you know, and head into the Mournland. But whether you just influence another NPC or you allude to some storyline that deals with some Fey folk or something outside of the world of Eberron, or your players are actually going to go there at higher level. I feel like a lot of this stuff, when you start traveling the planes, what it does is it just opens up the tiers of gameplay a lot. So really cool chapter, all on the planes. I mean, I'm scrolling. I mean, here we go. If we go back to the beginning of this chapter, check this out. I mean, there's the amount of content here, right? Right there, planes, page 143. I'm on 183 and I'm still in the planes. Okay, so we're looking at like 50 pages. Yes, you could always say that's about 50 pages of stuff that I'm not really going to use, but when there's that much in there, you have to wonder, by the guy who created Eberron, you have to kind of wonder, is there something in there that I'm missing that might help bring a little more meat to my game? Let alone, of course, if your players are actually going to deal with the Fairy Court and the Undying Court and all that other stuff. Then, of course, you want to definitely go here. But it's a really good section on, I mean, we're talking 60 pages at this point. Here's where you're here, why you're here, guys. Character options, Chapter 6. So, you've got these new backgrounds, the Changeling Traveler, which gives us a new fine version of Glamour Weave known as Shift Weave. But when you're looking at these new backgrounds, you get the full treatment. What are the skill proficiencies it gives me? What languages can I speak as a result of picking that background? What equipment does that background allow me to start with? And so on. You've got the, of course, you know, your normal charts, flaws, personality traits, ideals. You have the Dakani Goblinoids, right? A new goblin feature, or a new background feature, Goblin Hospitality. Malenti. On a lot of these in this section, because I can go over all this stuff for another 4 hours on video, I'll kind of just slow down and let you pause the video as you wish. But we'll just talk about kind of the bullet points of what's here. So 3 new background options, I believe, is what's here. You've got the Changeling Traveler, the Dakani Goblinoids. So it's just giving you new right here. This section presents 2 variant background features that are designed to be used with the customizing a background rule in the PHP. If your DM allows it, you can use any background you wish as a base, then substitute Goblin Hospitality or Ul Dakan for its standard background feature. Got it. Malenti is another background option. You were born a Sahagin in the Eternal Domain. Here's all the skills, languages, so on and so forth. Tour of Duty, feature, stolen identity. It's a lot. Half a page or more on that background. All that good stuff. Races. Remember we poked into the Aasimar a little bit and introduced it to us lore-wise. Now, here's the traits. I want to play Aasimar, and I love that it's given us something rather than just saying, go to Vola's Guide to play the Aasimar. Okay? I think that's where they're from. Here we've got the Court Aasimar, and then we have another one, the Seeker Aasimar. So which one do you want to play? Which one fits best for your storyline within Eberron? So it gives us another race option in the Aasimar. Variant, right? Changes what resistances you might have and various abilities. Aranai Elves. Ruin-bound dwarves. Fully mutated, unnatural hair. Do I have some extra joints or living tattoos? Here's traits for the ruin-bound dwarves. Now you get into the Dakani Galdar, the house goblin. Or the house... Wait, what? Forget that. I'm thinking house elf. Dobby. That's maybe what messed up my lingo. Dakani Galdar. I said I was going to pull this on screen, so let me do this real quick. Looking at it, right? I think you have Stand by the Strong here for these guys, not stealth. So, different. Okay? So you have the goblins for the Dakani, the bugbears, of course, the hobgoblins, and then you have gnolls. Racial feats. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 racial feats. Yeah. A lot there as well. And then, I mean, look at this. Juggernaut plating. Prerequisite Warforged. Your armor is a part of you, strengthened by your life force. You gain the following benefits. Blah, blah, blah. So, just more options. Really cool. Class options. Like I said, I'll let you pause this as you wish. As you wish. What movie is that from? Come on, guys. Don't disappoint me. Comment it. What movie is it? So there it is. There's the Forge Adept. Scrolling through. Here's a level 15 of the Forge Adept. The Maverick. It's another Artificer subclass. Here's some new infusions. This section contains additional infusion options for use with all Artificer specialties. The Bane Weapon. You can now get Fortified Defense, a Healing Salve, Quiver of Energy, Resistance Breaker, Silent Weapon. Here's all the info on the new Bard College, College of the Dirge Singer. Here's the new Cleric, the Mind Domain, all psychic stuff. Not all psychic, but a lot of psychic stuff. And then the Circle of the Forged Druid. That's awesome. Can you turn into that? I don't know. I'll let you read that on your own. Really neat. Way of the Living Weapon Monk. Awesome sauce. Neat. Yeah, I mean, you know, the full treatment, of course, right, guys? When you get in the subclass, here's what you get at 3rd level. Here's what you get at this level. Here's all this other stuff. You know, I'll let you digest for yourself whether this is something you want, whether it's a fit. But always, you know, the selling point, like I said, is the person's name on the front cover. Like, this is the version that he plays at his table. There's no right way, wrong. I mean, hell, you don't have to play an Eberron. If it's not a fit for you, it's not a fit. There's a reason why this guy created it. You know, he's got stuff in his mind on what his version of Eberron looks like at his table and how he plays it. It's definitely worth a look. You know, because he kind of knows where this is going. We don't. You know? Yes, as a DM, you can create your own story. But the background, the lore of why a monk feels that way and does the things they do, you know? Items. Awesome stuff. You're going to get... Common, I think there's 7. Battle Rod, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No more. 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 items or something like that. Common, new magic items. You have some magic items from the Empire of Dakan. And we're talking a legendary breastplate here. The breastplate of Kamvul Norek. Galdur, the Mighty Dirge, an artifact. Alright, so that's 1, 2 items. The Grieving Tree, that's an Eldritch Machine. 3 items. 4 things, Keeper's Fang, a rare dagger. 5, the Blade of Truth. 6, 7 new magic items, ranging from common all the way into that artifact one. Dragon Marks, where it talks about if you want to start focusing on Dragon Mark focused items, right? And then I think what's really neat is I mean, look at this stuff. There's a ton here. But then it gets into Cyberus Dragon Marks with a bunch of details here on this stuff if you want to go this way. Cyberus Dragon Mark of Detection, Mark of Finding, Handling, Healing, and so on. I mean, this is really worthwhile for me because Dragon Marks is something that I think should be used in every campaign in some capacity. Because that's, you know, it's like saying that I'm playing Eberron, but I don't want to have a lot of like wide magic and I'm not going to deal with the Dragon Marks because I want to just go against the grain. Well, then play a different world. You know what I mean? These are sort of the essence of that world. They have a big influence on it. So when you have options that fit within that little mold, worth a look at. So that's what you're going to get there. And then you have a bunch of miscellaneous magic items. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, not a bunch, but 5. And then you have living ones as well. That's what I think where I was going with. Between the living ones as well, you have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Between all the little bits, 10 of the common ones, 5 to 7 of the Dakani things, another 13 between the living symbiont magic items and miscellaneous magic items. 30, 40 new, items. Outstanding. And then friends and foes. It just really dabbles into the Dalkir. More lore, more, story. A lot more. And then every one of these here, not every, but most of them are the real high level. This is CR23 Valara. And full stat block, legendary action, all those good bits. Okay, and then I think it even has layer actions and all this stuff. So big threats beyond, maybe the Lord of Blades or what's already in Eberron Rising from the Last War. The Forest Queen, the Fey Rulers. I love that you have a whole half page of beautiful artwork. Outstanding. That's a really cool. Reminds me of very World of Warcraft-ish. And then half a page of lore and details, and then boom, there's the full stat block. Let's run it at the table now. Let's bring it there and use that. The Forest Queen's lair, weapons of wooden bone, not bane, that come from it, things like that. Forgotten Prince. There's maybe his castle, the dark, foreboding castle of forgotten things. There's the stats, and then here's where you have a little bit lower one, but here's a new kind of specific monster to this world, a meld, and then you get into merfolk, Kori, Sahagin. There's a lot of cool bits here, guys. But video's been long enough. I hope something here helped. Take a look at it. I'll put a link in the description. Like I said, if you are playing in Eberron, it might be worth your money to take a look into this. And I think between the two, Eberron Rising from the Last War and this, I think it's worth a look into what the guy who created Eberron is saying that they like to use at their table. So there it is. I hope this helped. Thanks everyone for watching, and take care.